The apprenticeship is structured there to give you a really good, well-rounded, basic knowledge and understanding and skill level at a what we call like a minimum standard. But the apprenticeship sets you up to like how to learn in a construction context, how to learn in a building context for the rest of your career. And when you're done, that's not when you finish learning. Like when you're done your apprenticeship, it's not like, yeah, I'm a builder now and I've learned anything ever. No, it continues. Like that's where you kind of learn how to learn, because then you go into any job, any role, it's going to be different.
Cool. Well, Jason, thank you for coming on the podcast.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's good. We had a bit of a good yarn off air as well, but I want to kind of dive a bit deeper. You're not from here. You sound like you're from another place of the world.
Yeah, I'm from Canada originally.
Yeah. And how long ago did you move here again?
What did I say? It was 24 years ago. I don't know why I looked at my watch, but 24 years ago.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Why did you guys move to New Zealand from Canada?
It was just me, actually. I moved by myself. I originally came here on a university exchange program for a year.
Cool.
So I did 1 year of university at Auckland Uni, and then just didn't leave. So my family's all in Canada, and I'm sure they have interesting opinions about the fact that I just disappeared.
Yeah.
24 years ago. But,
yeah. And why did you? Is it just how old were you then?
I was, I don't know, 27, 26 and a half, something like that.
Right.
I said how old I am then, didn't I?
Yeah, well, someone will work it out.
Yeah.
Get a calculator out.
Someone will do some maths, yeah.
So what was the reason for the move? Is it just like the classic, like you're in your 20s and you just like, I just want to like live and go experience something else?
Partially, I think that was why I did the exchange. I had a friend who had done one, and I had 1 year of university left, and they were like, do it, because cost-wise it's quite effective. Like, because you pay your fees at your home university, so you're technically still enrolled there, but you're just doing it somewhere else. And the dollar was a bit better. The Canadian dollar was better than the New Zealand one, so living costs were a bit lower for me, and the fees were good, and it was cool. It was a cool way to see somewhere else and meet a whole bunch of people. So at the end of that year, during that time, I was involved with a group on the campus, which was a Christian group that I was involved with in Canada as well, and then I got involved with them there as well. And then at the end of that year, someone challenged me to come back and they had an internship program for another year. And someone challenged me and said, hey, why don't you come back and do that? And I was like, I had never thought of it. I had no plans to come back to New Zealand or to stay here. I was just like, oh, okay. It just was like, why not? Why not? It's like, when else am I going to have that opportunity? So I did, and then ended up liking it and enjoying, I think, the learning aspect of it, learning to do something different than what I'd done before, and just interacting with people. So we worked with, it was a charity that works with university students and mentoring and like kind of life coaching and that kind of stuff.
Right.
And also just talking to people about, our beliefs and things like that, if they're interested, and offering different things that way. And so it was, it ended up being from a 1 year internship to 9 years. So
amazing.
Spent 9 years doing that. Yeah.
And it was sort of just like the 1 year went into the other year.
They just kind of at the end of the year, or getting towards the end, I just like, what do I want to do? Do I want to go back to Canada? And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do there. Why don't I just keep doing this?
Yeah.
So, and I like New Zealand. Like, honestly, I'm from Calgary in Canada, which is fairly cold in the winter. So living here, although it's a bit uncomfortable in the winter, when it ends, I'm always, every year, even 24 years later, end of winter every year, I'm like, oh, is that it? Oh, cool.
Yeah.
In the middle of it, not so great, but
it's all just like the starting point or your expectations, right? That you're comparing it to. Like if you're coming from Calgary to here, it's like, this is great. Yeah. People that come from, I'm from South Africa. It was warm, much warmer there, and you come here and you're like, frick, it's cold here. Yeah. So it just depends where you've come from, right?
Yeah, my wife is from Singapore, so when she came here, it was like the opposite. Like, this is so dry and cold. Whereas for me, I'm like, this is humid and warm.
Yeah, that's so true, eh? Okay, so then obviously you met your wife here and decided to then that obviously...
Yeah, so it was a few years after that. I met her, and I'd already kind of decided to stay I didn't have any end time to leave. I was just like indeterminate, in the future.
Yeah.
Met her, and then we decided to get married and go from there.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's just stayed.
And so she's not from here either. So
it's kind of weird. She was born here. Her parents had been here studying and working in the 80s, and then so she had been born here. But then they moved back to Singapore. So she grew up in Singapore, but she came here to go to university. And then they followed shortly after. So most of her family's here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of cool.
Oh, cool. Is there like a bit of a connection? There's like a weird connection between Canada and New Zealand, right? What's that? Is that like
I think it's the, we're former British colony. So a lot of, you get a lot of British humor mixed in, and it's, English language and culturally is very similar. It's the kind of a little less in your face, I think, than a lot of others. And I think maybe the proximity to a larger nation that kind of overshadows you in some ways,
Yeah, it's
So
true. It's kind of like the Americans and Australians are like connected, and then Canada and New Zealand's like a bit more connected.
Yeah, yeah. And you have that same shared thing where there's this like bigger neighbor who thinks they're really cool and doesn't necessarily like you, but they don't really know you exist either.
They don't really think about you.
No, you think about them a lot.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, we could do that. And then they're like, who are you?
Yeah.
So maybe there's that side of it. It's a smaller size, even though Canada's big, but it's a smaller size relatively.
Yeah. No, there's definitely always been that like connection. I've actually found over the years that a lot of Canadians come here, Kiwis going over there, and it's like a seamless kind of like. I wonder if there was like some sort of like government incentive or anything like that to like travel there or something. But
I don't know.
Must just be like a cultural thing.
I think it might just be comfortable. Yeah, it's not that different that you feel like, oh, what is going on?
Yeah. Okay, so what was your vibe when you were like in your 20s? What was it? Were you like a kind of like a hippie? Were you like a happy-go-lucky guy? Were you like a jock?
I definitely wasn't a jock. I don't know. Good question. There are some funny photos when I look back. Yeah, there's some weird photos happening.
Weird hairstyles and things?
My brother, my younger brother played basketball at university, and he's a lot taller than me. And so I hung out with a lot of his friends when I was at university, because we were at university at the same time. Even though I was a few years ahead of him, we just kind of hung out with that crowd. So I hung around with a lot of athletes and jocks.
Yeah.
But I wasn't one, so it was a bit weird, but
yeah,
it was still a similar kind of mindset. And my family growing up was very wrapped up in his athletics.
Yeah.
I wasn't very good, but it was still fun going along to his games and doing things with him. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So kind of just by proximity, not necessarily from participation.
Yeah. Better Builder Apprentice is brought to you by our friends at Builders Academy. Builders Academy is New Zealand's newest apprentice provider, and they definitely here to shake things up. Why use Builders Academy? Well, first of all, they're just as good as the other guys, but on top of that, they will come on site every 6 to 8 weeks. Yeah, that's quite a lot, right? That means that your apprentices will be a lot more engaged, and they'll have to learn a lot less modules in between trainer visits. Secondly, they are backed by master builders. And thirdly, they have an experienced and motivated team that knows the industry inside and out. In fact, most of them are ex-chippies. Just go to buildersacademy.co.nz. So you have a background, and there's a lot of like coaching, mentoring background through what you did at university.
Yeah.
What was the transition point that made you all the way to Builders Academy? What was the path there?
It was a bit of a windy journey. So like I said, I worked for that charity for 9 years, working with university students in various different ways. I led a team, had a staff team for a while, and then I was also in their office organizing a bunch of things as well. Then moved on from that, was in another community ministry. We ran a fitness center for 9 years as well. And I was a fitness instructor. I have training as a fitness instructor. And we did that, ran that community-focused nonprofit gym in Glenfield, and we ran that for 9 years. And then I did a bike repair shop. I had a shop for 5 years, because that's another thing I do on the side, is I'm also a certified bicycle mechanic. So lots of different things that I've been involved in. And then at the end of that, when that was it was doing really well, but it was just a lot of work for me. At that time, it had, just for various reasons, had become down to just being one person. So I was running most of it. I did have an apprentice who was very helpful, but it was still a lot for me to run. Just I'm not sometimes the most organized person, so that side of it was very difficult and quite stressful. And I also have a bunch of back issues from a car accident a long time ago, and so bending over, working on bikes all day long for 5 years really started to become noticeable. And so I was kind of at a transition point where I was like, what do I do? And a friend of mine was doing the role training, basically the assessors for carpentry apprenticeships, and he suggested, hey, you know what, you'd actually be really good at this role, because you do have a good technical grasp of things. Like I like technical things. I do like building stuff on my own. I also did landscape construction for a few years when I was at university. So I built a lot of decks and a lot of retaining walls and a lot of digging holes and planting things. But and then I also was a welder for a year when I dropped out of uni at one point. I did that, welding trailers, made trailers for a year. And so I have a variety of those kind of hands-on type interests. And he said, look, his explanation, because at first I thought he was joking, and then I sat down with him and said, okay, what do you mean by that? And he said, look, I would rather teach you the qualification and not have to teach you how to interact with people and how to ask good questions and how to mentor someone or how to kind of read someone and help direct them in the right direction. He said, that is something you've been doing for 20 years. I'd rather just teach you what is the carpentry qualification and what does that involve.
Yeah.
And so I took him up on it and applied for the job and got the job. So, and that's where we are today.
That's cool. Yeah, because I've never thought about like that, because sometimes you just sort of think of the practical element of the. It's almost like hard skills versus soft skills, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes, a lot of people always say, "Oh, it's better to." You can always teach someone the hard skills. The soft skills are actually like the difficult ones, or even like just other things like attitude and things like that. But so the fact that you had background in like coaching, mentoring, being able to work with people, being able to take someone from point A to point B and take them along that was like a valuable thing for them. So, and then they could just teach you some of the practical elements.
And I'm still learning that. I mean, every day I learn some new thing that I'm like, oh yeah, cool.
Yeah.
And it's I find it really interesting. Like I like learning that stuff. I mean, you can obviously through the years I've had to learn lots of different things, moving from a variety of different roles. And so it's something I do enjoy doing.
Yeah.
It's been interesting. I think the realization that it is a big people thing. I remember the term or part of one of the role is pastoral care, they call it,
right?
Which I found really interesting because it's just it's actually just taking care of people, and directing them, helping them in the direction that they're going, and that's something I am very passionate about. I really do love to see people achieving and moving out of kind of where they are to where they want to get to, and helping them. And sometimes they don't even see it as a possibility. I think sometimes you run into, especially with apprentices, sometimes you run into people who maybe have been not super taken care of for a while, and they really feel like, oh, I'm never going to get there. And just helping them to see that, hey, there is an end and you can get there. Here's what we need to do. Let's keep going.
So how big of a part of your role is that? Like, kind of, there's like obviously the practical elements, and they're obviously getting taught by their employer and the team around them. You're not over there like teaching them how to put up a door or whatever, but they're getting taught by their employer and the team, and you're the one that come and assesses practically whether they're making progress and can tick things off, and know the what's the word, the book work and all that. But how much of that is that, like you just said, that sort of coach? Because I think especially the first year and a half, for a lot of apprentices, they do start to lose a little bit of hope because they don't see a lot of progress. And they feel like, gee, am I ever going to freaking finish this?
Yeah, I think it can be a struggle because especially if they've started really young, especially if you get an apprentice who's maybe straight out of school. And when you're in school, you kind of just get handed stuff like, here's your next assignment. Here's what you're doing now. Here's your grade, go, keep going. But they move into apprenticeship. It's a big leap. It's like, it's not just moving into the working world. You're moving into the working world where you're still studying and working at the same time. So that's a lot to adjust to. I remember when I moved into, working more, it's a big difference from studying, and this is a combination of both. So I think it's a lot for them to absorb and figure out. And so I think our role as the assessor is part of it, and the assessing and going, okay, how's your knowledge going? What have you learned? Tell me, or write it down. Let me look through it and quiz you, ask you some questions and tell me about how you do that and all that kind of side of it. But then the other side of it is their progress. How are they doing as a person? Are they struggling? What are the things that are going on in their life? What else is going on? Why maybe are they struggling with the stuff on site? Are they maybe having some interpersonal issues with the people they work with? Are they maybe having some issues at home? Maybe they have some health issues, and trying to take that all into consideration and going, okay, well, how can we look at all of those things and make this still a positive direction? How can we make it fit that person? Because everyone, especially I think in this type of environment, is dealing with different things. They all come from a different background. They maybe have different goals. They have different learning issues. Maybe they have some things that don't help them to sit down and do book work. Maybe they're struggling with some learning differences. So recognizing that or identifying those things, and then figuring out ways, well, how can we then work with that? What things can we put in place? What can we change? Sometimes that means communicating with the employer, because maybe they're not aware of it. Usually they are, because they're working with the person every day. They usually are pretty tuned into that, but sometimes they aren't. And you having that discussion and going, well, what can we do to maybe help them?
Yeah.
And also talking with them about it, because maybe they have never had that support going through school. They've just survived. And that's part of the reason why maybe they left early and said, I'm just going to do a trade. When you're like, oh, it's actually a really awesome decision. It's not like a just do a trade.
Yeah.
And I think they don't realize that sometimes. I think people will push them to go, oh, why don't you just go do a trade?
As almost like a plan B.
It's like, because you're not really suited for this. And you're like, well, no, that's not what it is. Like, this is actually a legitimate, very cool career choice and lifestyle choice. Like, it's a really big deal. And I think that's a lot of what they're realizing, especially when they first start. The kind of older apprentices that I have, they're usually a lot more like they've figured that stuff out. And they're like, this is what I'm going to do. And this is how I'm going to do it. And you're like, cool, let's do that.
Yeah.
But
what are some of the sort of like pros and cons, or not pros and cons, but like the positive and the stuff they do well versus not so well when you look at like more of a mature apprentice versus those young ones? Like, what's the difference you've seen?
Yeah, lots of times there's that discipline is there where they've kind of figured out what direction they're going in life, and they've started this apprenticeship because it's part of that. And so they kind of get right to it. They're like, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this. What do I need to do? They ask you more questions like, what do I need to do next? How should I be working on this? And you're like, okay, let's do it. Because I think lots of times too, they'll have other responsibilities. So they'll maybe have families already, or maybe they'll have a mortgage. They've got things that they're like, I need to get through this so I can actually not have to study and work, and I can just work.
Yeah.
And get this qualification and then move on to the next step. And so they're a little more driven sometimes. And sometimes some of the younger ones are too, but not always.
Yeah.
I think probably consistently the more mature apprentice has that. And when you do bump into a younger apprentice that has that, it's quite awesome. But
yeah,
it's more.
And is it like, and then does it flip as well? Like, sometimes the younger apprentices are a bit more moldable, and the mature ones are a bit more like they're set in their ways sometimes?
Yeah, it can be, I'm sure. And that's probably more. Employers probably maybe have to deal with that more.
Yes.
They may have issues they need to work through with just how the person interacts with people or whatever. I don't know what the issues would be, but I find on our end, generally, most of the more mature apprentices are quite, like from an apprenticeship side of things, are quite a lot more kind of ahead because of that. Because of their maturity. But I'm sure there's some other issues that maybe come up on the actual work site.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So for a sort of aspiring apprentices, whether they're young or whether they're even mature, it might even be someone listening to this that's like doing something completely different.
Yeah.
That's like 27 or 30 or something, and thinking about maybe getting into building. Can you explain to me just like the structure of how they get into their apprenticeship and how they can get qualified?
Yeah, so basically you need to have an employer first. So you need to find employment. So you need to find a builder who needs apprentices and is willing to take you on as an apprentice. That usually involves some kind of trial period with them where they'll want to see, like, do you actually fit with my team or with me? Do we get along? Are you a good worker, et cetera? So that's usually the first part. And once you've got that established, where you've found someone who's willing to take you on as an apprentice, and they like you like them, that's cool. Then you basically start your apprenticeship. So you contact Builders Academy. We then enroll you in the apprenticeship program. So you have to fill in a training agreement and just paperwork between you and your employer, because your employer agrees that they're going to train you. You agree that I'm going to be trained and I'm going to do the work. I'm going to show up for work and I'm going to do the work. And then we agree that we're going to help you along the way and we're going to assess your apprenticeship. And so that's kind of the package deal. And then they just start. we're learning basically. So we usually will come out and see them and kind of explain how it works. So we explain that the assessments, how they work, that we usually we come out every 6 weeks and we see you on site, and we basically the apprenticeship is structured in a bunch of knowledge stuff that you have to know, as well as practical. So there's kind of 2 parts to it, but it's all together. It's all integrated.
Yeah.
And so basically what I try and tell apprentices to do at the beginning is just to start whatever they're working on. At the end of the day, spend 10 minutes. Just sit in your car or whatever for 10 minutes, put a timer on your watch, sit down for 10 minutes, read through the knowledge section for the work that you've been doing that day. Even if it was just, I've been helping cut nogs for a wall, then read the wall framing unit. Just read through the questions that are in there, because it's all structured where there's questions. It's like, these are the questions you need to know the answers for. And here's, and then you can look up the answers. Some of them you might even know. And that's where, you spend that 10 minutes every day doing that when it's fresh in your mind from the day. And honestly, that's all the study you need to do, really. If you do that every single day, you'll be amazed at 6 weeks later when I show up, and just what we do is what we call an integrated assessment. So we'll walk around on site and say, well, what have you been working on? And it's like, oh, well, I helped cut nogs for this wall. And you're like, cool. And then we ask them, about walls. We go, well, what kind of wall is it? What did you have to think about? What are the different parts of a wall? And you just start asking those questions. Well, they can explain it to you from what they actually did.
Yeah.
So instead of trying to, okay, let's sit down and do a quiz. Instead, it's like, okay, well, what did you do? And then I just kind of try and ask questions around what they're working on or what they've been working on, and ask, okay, well, how else could you do that? And that kind of thing. And then, a lot of their knowledge, they don't realize that they actually have learned it. But especially if they've been able to sit down consistently and look through stuff, then they'll know the wider range than just, because if you want to just show up on site and just do everything people tell you and just do that, that's great. That's cool. Maybe if that's your end goal, maybe you shouldn't do your apprenticeship, honestly, because there's nothing wrong with just being a laborer and just, hey, that's cool. If that's what you want to do, sweet. Nothing wrong with that. And then you don't have the extra weight of having to learn a whole bunch of stuff. You just do what you're told and do it well. That's cool. But if you want to do your apprenticeship, you need to be thinking about, how else could I do this? What other ways is there to do this? Why am I putting this here? Why does this go here? And asking some of those questions and looking them up yourself. So I think just having that desire to learn more about the tasks that you're doing. Because you're right. Sometimes at the beginning, especially, they might be just doing really small things and they don't feel like it's anything worthwhile. But the reality is, if they look at it and they look around them, there will be things that actually are important that they could expand on in their own learning.
Yeah. So it's almost like that kind of curiosity, right? Being driven by their curiosity, asking a whole bunch of questions.
Yeah. But I mean, you have to kind of weigh that as like, I tell them, like, look, ask questions, but you got to look at, like, am I being annoying? Because the reality is, your boss or your supervisor, your coworkers, they're there to get a job done. You are the apprentice, but you can't just inundate them with questions sometimes. Some people love that, and some employers love that, and it's great. But you kind of got to gauge that and go, okay, am I being annoying? Yeah. And just ask some strategic questions. And then some of the other stuff, spend some time looking it up maybe.
That's true as well. You got to find that sweet spot wherever that is. You'll find out
and it's
pretty
different.
quick.
And it's different with everyone, but you will you'll find out. I think on most building sites, you'll find out where that spot is.
You have a couple of rolled eyes or like a couple of sighs or something, you'll figure that out pretty quick. It is kind of true, what you said before, like when these apprentices come out of school and school's so structured in a way that it's not really like reality, right? It's sort of structured in a way like you do tests and tick, 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 tick. Yeah, cool. Move on to the next thing. And there's always like you get like a little bit of like an award for progress, like consistently, whether it's like your mark or whatever for your assignment or test or whatever. Then they go into do their apprenticeship, and it's sort of like long periods of no little awards, no little medals. So
we try to give them stuff, so that's why we've kind of divided it up where like you have the knowledge sections, but then in the practical, it's actually divided up into different sections. So it's not just can you do it or not.
Right.
It goes from like supervised to limited supervision, unsupervised, and then commercially competent, which is where they want to get to.
Right.
And that's something that is put in there to give them some progress, where it's like, oh, hey, you did that. Cool. Supervised. First time it's like, oh, but all I did was cut a bunch of nogs, like I said before, or whatever. Or all I did was put down some flooring. like, cool, but you did it, even if you didn't do the whole task. And they're like, oh, cool. So then they get a percentage. We send them a sheet after every visit that gives them like their percentage, and they can see that moving up slowly. So that does allow them to at least see that, oh, I am progressing, and sometimes you do get apprentices where you're like, you call them up to say, hey, I'm going to come and do another site visit. And they're like, oh, I haven't done anything. I haven't been doing anything. It won't be worth it. And I'm like, well, I have to come out anyway, because that's just the way it is. And honestly, when you show up, you can usually pull some information out of them and go, okay, well, what have you been doing? And they're like, oh, nothing. I just did this. And you're like, okay, well, how did you do it? Why did you do it? What else? And then you talk through it. And after, that half an hour maybe meeting with them, there's actually has been some progress that they just didn't realize that they were learning things.
Yeah.
They just maybe didn't realize it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I mean. Like they don't realize that. And that's maybe that sometimes they can get a bit, they can't see the light at the end of the tunnel sometimes. I love a bit of bro psychology. Have you seen like any themes throughout an apprenticeship where where there's a dip in enthusiasm or like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
I think it does happen over time. Like sometimes maybe because it does change, like at the beginning it is slow. There's not maybe a lot of progress. And then you see them start to be able to do more tasks. So they're given more things because their skills are getting, improving. And the trust gets higher. The employer or the supervisor is like, oh, I know I can trust him to do that. So you get to do a little more interesting things. But then it kind of also gets to a point where then it kind of stagnates a little bit, because once you can do something, that's great. But can you do it to the right level yet? That takes a lot of practice. That's why apprenticeships take 4 years. Because sure, you've learned the technical, I know how to put in this window, but to do it correctly and to do it nicely and to do it fast enough takes a lot of practice.
Yeah.
So that's where, it can kind of, there's a bit of a lull where lots of times that's when you maybe will be working through more of the knowledge stuff as well. And then that helps the progression still continue. But it takes a bit of time sometimes for an apprentice to get to the skill level where they can do it quick enough to the right standard and safely and all the things that they need to do to be commercially competent. And that's why I try and remind them of that. I'm like, look, it takes time. It takes a lot of repetition. And that's why the apprenticeship isn't just like, oh, I smashed out all the knowledge stuff. I just sat down and studied it like I was at school and did that within a year. And so when am I going to be done? It's like, well, probably 3 years from now, because to actually do all those things to the right level, it'll probably take you a lot of practice.
Yeah, exactly. Also just like the nature of like the employer's work coming through and what you're actually working on.
The actual
some of the stuff's just outside of your control a little bit.
And lots of times, sometimes, and that can be frustrating. That's hard for apprenticeships sometimes because it is so dependent on the work.
Yeah.
And so there'll be certain things where they're doing really well, but then all of a sudden maybe the employer runs out of work, or they end up, on a job where it's just a repetition of the same thing over and over. And so that can get difficult.
Yeah.
So that's where it is hard that's part of our role too, is talking with the employer about that as well and saying like, hey, with his apprenticeship, here's what's missing.
Yeah.
Is there any way you can either find some work, or do you know someone else who maybe is doing some of that work that you can just loan him out, loan the apprentice out to go work for that person for, a month or something? I have an apprentice right now who has actually moved down to Queenstown for a few months because someone offered him some work doing some roof cladding work. And he's like, oh, I don't really have any of that yet. He's like, that'd be really cool. And so he talked to me. He's like, oh, would that work? I'm like, yeah, do it.
Yeah.
Take those opportunities, and his employer was cool with it. Like they discussed it. It wasn't just like, I'm out of here. It was a mutual agriement. Like, hey, go for it. That's a good idea because you'll get some good experience.
Yeah.
So those kind of things are important.
Yeah, absolutely. What kind of advice do you have for apprentices or like aspiring apprentices, I should say, if they're looking to pick an employer? Is it, would it be if say the building company was just building like, custom homes, or maybe they're doing like multi-unit development work versus like renovations, like what would be a good mix, or what's the perfect mix for
the ideal
perfect scenario?
It would be a mixture of all those things, but I think I've found that renovations, you tend to learn a lot more because there's a lot more problem solving. It's not just follow the plans and put it up. I mean, I'm not saying you don't have to problem solve with like building a new build, you still do. But with renovations, lots of times there's a lot more problem solving that goes into it, because it isn't, when you open up a wall or you take down some walls, it's not necessarily what you thought, and so you got to go, okay, well, how are we going to figure this out? Or you're doing an extension on a house that's an older house, you need to somehow make that work together. It can be a lot more. I have had apprentices where it's a bit overwhelming for them because they're just like, oh my gosh, I don't understand what's going on. But lots of times that environment is quite good for them because they get exposed to a lot of different things. Even if sometimes it'll be maybe small pieces of it. You're not standing up walls for an entire house, but you're doing little pieces of different things, and you get a good variety that way. I guess ideally you would have a little bit of all those things. You'd have maybe, hey, I get to do a slab and then build a house from pre-nailed, walls and trusses and everything. And then next we're doing a renovation of a villa where we have to actually frame the roof and straighten a whole bunch of things because they're just wonky. So I think, yeah, ideally it'd be someone who does all of that, but you don't necessarily run into that as much.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I do try and encourage it. Especially young apprentices, I think sometimes get discouraged with the renovation side of things because they're like, oh, I just want to build a whole house. You're like, cool, but I think you learn a lot from doing renovations as far as as an apprentice because you're learning a lot of quite different skills. There's a lot of problem solving and there's a lot of just making things fit. Putting that round peg in a square hole, and it's interesting to see them have to figure that out. And when they do get it, it's quite cool.
Yeah. What sort of do you have any good advice like for young apprentices? Like, so if they looking to get into it, is there some advice around like, I don't know, attitude or approach or how they should like think about it? Or is there any sort of that sort of thing you can think of?
Yeah,
you sort of tell them?
Big one, especially younger apprentices maybe who haven't had a lot of like work experience, they haven't done a lot of jobs. I think biggest thing is like show up on time and do what you're told to do. It's okay to ask questions, but just be prepared to do the work. Show up on time and do the work. Those are the two huge things. They'll go a long way because it just shows your commitment to it. And your employer will love that because that's what they pay you to do. And then that will lead to other things because then you'll get other opportunities because you'll get trusted with more. The more that you display that, hey, I'll do what you need me to do, they'll trust you with more things, which gives you more opportunities down the line.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that maybe gets missed sometimes, but I think that's the biggest thing. It's simple, but that's the biggest thing. And then the other thing is that curiosity that we talked about before. Just be curious about how, even if it's stuff you're not working on, you see someone else working on something, just thinking about, even just to yourself going, ooh, how are they doing that? Why are they doing it that way? And just seeing the whole building site as that, as like, oh, I'm going to learn from this, even if it's not stuff I'm directly doing, even if I'm digging a hole or sweeping or piling stuff. What else is going on around you? There's a lot of stuff going on around you that you can still learn from. And that makes a huge difference to an apprenticeship. And just remembering that you're there to learn. That building site it's a great opportunity because apprenticeships are cool because you're getting paid to learn instead of paying to learn.
Yeah.
So you go to university, which I did for a long time. I spent like 9 years in total at university, and it's expensive. It takes a lot of money, and you're just going there and sitting, and they're just talking at you and whatever. Whereas with your apprenticeship, you're getting paid to do a job, but you're also learning and going to get a qualification from it. And that's an awesome opportunity. And if you see it that way, I think it affects how you look at your day. So even if it's like, oh, it's raining and I got to dig drainage, trenches, like just do it. It's like you're getting paid for it, and you might learn something from it.
Yeah. What's your sort of POV around young apprentices, Gen Z?
Yeah.
Dan over here is our producer. He's a Zoomer. He's a Zoomer in the office.
Yeah.
And what's been your sort of like, what do you sort of see with the young apprentices? Like, is there sort of a difference? Are they soft? Are they more innovative? Like, what's the sort of thinking around them?
I don't know if it comes down to a generational thing necessarily. I think they're very distracted. There's just so many distractions. There's lots of distractions. When you're young, there's lots of distractions anyway. But specifically now, I've got 4 kids, and I can see that they're just so easily distracted by stuff. It's nuts. I don't think it's anything to do like hardwired. We haven't got like shorter attention spans or anything like that. I think it's just we have more things that just distract us. So I think that's probably something that there's so many things going on. Like I've heard stories from employers who are a bit annoyed at sometimes, but they'll be maybe doing a job away where they take their apprentices and they go away like down to Rotorua or something for a while to build a house there. And so they have nothing else to do. Their apprentices are just there with them. They're staying at like the same place or something like that. And then in the evenings, they're like, hey, why don't you come and look at, hey, this is the work we're doing tomorrow. Why don't you come and do that? And they're like, oh, no, I'm good. And then just sit there on their phone all night scrolling reels or something, and so I can see why that would be very frustrating. When they had this great opportunity where they could sit down at the table with their employer and look through the work they're going to do the next day and go, oh, wow, and learn all that. But they just, I think the way that life is at, this time for that generation, they're just distracted by lots of other things. And that I think makes it difficult. I think once they figure it out, a lot of times they'll get to that point in their apprenticeship where they realize like, oh, this is taking way too long, or I'm not progressing. And then they go, I need to do something about this. So that maturity comes, but the reality is like your brain is developing till you're like 25 for a guy, especially for men, that like you don't really have that executive function to the full capacity until you're like in your mid 20s.
Yeah.
Before that, you just easily don't know what's going on.
Because like I can't imagine that, because I get distracted and I'm like almost 40, you know what I mean? But like if you're like a young like 20-year-old or whatever, even like an 18-year-old, 17-year-old, like starting their apprenticeship, it's like they're on TikTok. They could be like, I could be like drop shipping right now. I could be like day trading. I could be like driving a Lambo.
I could be an influencer.
What am I doing?
I want to be an influencer.
Yeah. And even now, like these like young apprentices now, they are influencers at the same time. So it's just like they're making like, $5,000 a month, $10,000 a month because they're influencing on top of the building. How do you get like motivating to
I think that's part of, I think my job, I see it as part of my job is helping them to try and stay focused, or reminding them that, hey, this is what you're doing. This is what you're actually part of. It's like, cool, there's all this other stuff going on around you. That's great. But this is what you've committed to studying. You want to finish this. This is what you need to do. And just reminding them of that. And I think it helps going to see them every 6 weeks. Definitely helps, I've noticed.
Yeah.
Because you're there more often and you're kind of in their face a little more often and reminding them that, hey, remember, this is what you're doing. Because if you don't want to do it, that's fine. Then don't. You're not being forced to be an apprentice. I mean, it does probably make it a lot harder to work on a building site if you're also an apprentice, because you're also having to learn all these other things, and you can't just, mindlessly do the work you're being given. But if that's what you're wanting to do, then then do it.
Yeah, you can't, because you're doing like two things. You can't add like a bunch of other stuff to distract you even more, right? In terms of the 6-week thing,
yes.
So with Builders Academy, obviously you work with the other crowd beforehand.
Yeah.
They don't meet quite as regularly.
No, it's much bigger gaps.
Yeah. So what have you seen personally been the benefits of like doing every 6 weeks?
Yeah, I mean, it was one of the reasons when I was presented with the option of coming to Builders Academy, that was one of the reasons that was appealing to me, was that more frequent visits. Because I had noticed with apprentices that I was assessing and taking care of, that a lot happens in that time in between visits. A lot can happen. If there's a big gap, there's a lot that can happen. Like when you're working on a building site or multiple sites, there's a lot of things that happen in that time. Even 6 weeks, there's a lot that goes on. When you go see apprentices, sometimes there's a lot of different things they've been involved in. So I think the shorter time between assessments makes a huge difference, because they see more progress. You as the assessor, for me, I got a much better idea of what they've been working on, and I get to see more of what they're actually doing. And that makes a huge difference as well. But I think for them, the more frequent visits helps them to remember, like, what am I supposed to be doing? Because it's easy to just get into like a routine. If I show up for work and I do my work, and that's what it's like to be, an employed person who's working, right? But then it's easy to forget that I'm also studying at the same time.
Yeah.
And so then seeing them every 6 weeks is a good reminder to them, like, oh yeah, I should be working on this. I should be thinking about this. And not just doing the work.
Yeah. Well, it's like less cramming and stuff,
yes, yeah.
And also if you only come see them like every, 3 months or whatever, it's like that job already could be done. You could be on a new job, then that's kind of,
completely don't even see it. And I have apprentices who I knew when they were previously, and then now with Builders Academy. And I look back at the stuff the times I met with them then, and now in discussing, a few years of getting to know them more and seeing what they've been working on, I'm like, oh, actually, you did a lot during that time you didn't tell me about. And they're like, oh yeah, because sometimes early in their apprenticeship, they don't really think about what they've been doing. Yeah. That's another thing I try and encourage apprentices to do, is to write down what they've been working on. write down the jobs.
Like get like a diary or something?
Get a diary, pen and paper, or use your phone, whatever works for you. I suck with writing things on my phone, so I have paper. I'm old, so I like paper. But write it down. Keep track of all the different things you've been doing. Because when I show up, even if it's 6 weeks and say, oh, what have you been working on? Inevitably, they're going to forget some things.
Yeah.
The other day, I saw 2 apprentices, and they both obviously been working together on the same sites. And I saw one, and he told me the stuff he'd been doing. I was like, oh, cool, wrote it all down, and we chatted and stuff. And then I saw the other one after that and was chatting with him, and he's like, oh, and then we did this. And then there was like about 4 other things they had done, which I said, oh, did you do that as well? And he's like, oh, yeah, right, I forgot about those. So there was actually a whole bunch more stuff that he'd just forgotten about. But it happens even more if there's a bigger gap. So I find that more frequent visits really helps with that. It really helps with the knowledge side of things too, because they don't feel like they have to have such a huge amount of stuff that they've crammed in their brain.
Right.
It can be smaller chunks. So even if they leave it too late and cram, they don't have to necessarily do as much. You know?
Yeah. There's always a little bit of cramming going on.
Yeah, there's always. Yeah.
So you actually saw that in practice, like apprentices that were at the previous company versus
and it was with me. So I'm not going to say like, oh, it was someone who was really negligent or something like that. No, it was me.
It was you.
It was me. So,
right.
And I thought, I figured I was doing a pretty good job, but it's just stuff he hadn't told me. I just didn't know that's what they'd been doing because it had been whatever, 3.5, 4 months between visits at that time. And you go see him, and that's a lot of stuff to remember, 4 months worth of work, right?
Yeah.
And he just didn't tell me about a few things, which now 2 years later, he's like, oh, but I did that. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, okay, I like the thing you said earlier about them doing like 10 minutes, like jump in their van or something.
Yep.
Do 10 minutes after.
It's something I've been trying to encourage them to do. I don't know how many apprentices have actually taken me up on it and have tried it, but I try and encourage them to do it. It just in my mind, I was trying to think of a way to make it simpler. And also, because I notice a lot of them get quite a bit stressed out. Like when I call them and they're like, I'm going to come see you next week. It's like, oh no. And they kind of freak out. And when I see them, they say that. They're just like, oh man, last night I was like, oh, just, trying to learn. And I'm like, it's not the best way to learn stuff.
They're all like tired. They smash 3 Monster Energies and they're like,
and they're just like,
all night.
And I'm like, I think it's, so I was trying to think about it, like what would be a better way to do that? And realistically, I think 10, 15 minutes a day, just reviewing. The questions are fairly simple. Like it just talks about what you've been working on. And if you just read through those questions and think about, okay, what did I do? Can I answer that question? And the ones that you're like, nah, I don't know what that is, either make a note of it and like, okay, tomorrow I'm going to ask somebody what that is, or look it up. In that 15 minutes, just grab your books and look it up and see if you can find the answer. Yeah. Or even just Google it. I mean,
how accurate is ChatGPT with looking stuff up?
You got to be careful because any AI, they're designed to. Their biggest priority is to tell you what they think you want to hear. So you got to be careful. You got to be careful. So you do need to be very specific, especially specific about New Zealand. So our building code is a lot different than other countries, and the materials we use and the way that we do things sometimes is different than other countries. So you need to be careful that you put in specific stuff, but they can be good because it'll do a big search for you of a whole bunch of things all at once.
Yeah.
Instead of you having to sift through it all.
You have to use AI and you ask something and then they give you like an answer and you go, that's not right. And they go, oh yeah, you're absolutely right. Sorry about that. Like, why are you just not giving me the right answer at the start?
They tell you what they think you want to hear. That's their whole.
So I've even like typed them on ChatGPT. I've been like, okay, stop like being so agreeable, like push back, and they're like, okay, sorry. And then they actually it comes back. Yeah. With a lot more like accurate answers when you actually tell them not to do that.
Yeah,
but
I've tried it out for analyzing some stuff. Sometimes where I've got like a whole bunch of stuff to go through and categorize. And I'm like, oh, what if I just feed it all into there and tell it to categorize it? And it does it all. And I'm like, you're looking at it going, that's not really what I asked you to do. And then you kind of be more specific. And they're like, oh, yeah. Because they're just like, oh, you just wanted it all in one thing. I'm like, no. I want you to tell me actually what it says, not what you think I want it to say.
Yeah, funny story. Actually, I'm trying to, because I'm getting fat, so I've been trying to get put like a eating plan together and like get back to the gym and stuff like that. Yep. And this was like a couple of weeks ago. I used ChatGPT, and then I was like, put it together. I want like this much, carbs, this much protein, and this much, calories, and all that sort of stuff. And it puts the whole thing, and I kind of cross-checked it a bit and stuff, and I had to kind of redo a few things because it wasn't quite right. In the end, I thought it was quite good. So then my wife makes me food every day. Like I'm eating like perfectly
Yeah.
all week, right? My wife's, I turn up with all these lunch boxes at work
Yeah.
and stuff. And I'm like, oh, that's a lot of kumara, a lot of, lot of potato in this meal and stuff. I thought I'm trying to do like a calorie deficit, right? So like it turns out I'm like, because I'm trying to eat like say 1900 calories or something. And I do like a whole week, and the whole time I'm like, man, this is like the best diet I've ever been on. I'm also full the whole time, almost like too full,
Yeah.
And then one night, my wife's giving me all this kumara and stuff because I'm telling her what to cook me. And then I was like, I'm going to look this up and stuff. Turns out, literally every day I was like 700 calories over not even the dip, like where I was, so I'm almost 1,000 calories over where I should have been. And so, don't trust ChatGPT.
Yeah. I mean, with that, like one of the easiest things to do for diet stuff is use a smaller plate.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, that's a huge. I used to tell this like when I was a fitness instructor. This is what I used to tell people all the time: is your brain will look at that full smaller plate and think you're eating the same amount, even though it's actually less.
Yeah, that's a good way of doing it.
So it's a big thing to do, and even just changing the portions of things, like the carbs on there, just make them less, but still put stuff on the plate, but maybe some protein or maybe a little more veggies or something, and that will because a lot of it is mental. A lot of it is just your brain thinking, oh, I'm still hungry, and eat slowly. That's another huge one. It takes like half an hour for your brain and your stomach to communicate and realize like, oh, I'm actually full, stop eating. So if you eat everything within 10 minutes, you probably ate more than you needed.
That's a good
eat
point.
slowly and use a smaller plate, and you'll notice it does make a big difference. And it's less of a chore where it's like, oh man, I gotta count how many calories are on here. It just becomes a bit of unless you're one of those people. I know people who are very like, I love to have a spreadsheet with it on there and I just analyze it, and it's like, cool, go for it. Those people, usually they're fine. But the rest of us, where that's not our passion, just little things like that, where you're just kind of tricking your brain so that you don't feel like you're really doing anything, but you are. Smaller plate, a little bit less of the carbs on there, maybe no carbs, but it depends.
I'll send this to my wife. I'll send this episode to her. She doesn't listen to this podcast, so I'll send this one to her specifically. The construction industry is ever evolving. How do you see the training like having to evolve over time? Because what I've started to see is that like it seems like everything's becoming more specialized, and so the all-round builder, I feel like 20 years from now, the all-round builder is going to look very different. Like, there's not going to be many of them left because everything's getting so specialized. What's your POV on that? Yeah,
you definitely do see that. You see a lot more things going to specific like subcontractors who specialize in I just do this and I just do that. And it can be a money thing or a speed thing where they're just faster at it because it's all they do, or they cost less than it would be to do it time wise and just capacity. I think sometimes. I think in some areas of the country, it's definitely still the other way. Where people do everything, and I know some of the more not remote, but maybe less populated areas where you don't have so many subcontractors running around doing stuff. Those builders do tend to do a lot of everything, which is cool, and that's great. But I do see it. You definitely do see it that a lot more stuff is specialized. And as far as the training side of it and the apprenticeship side of it, there is a lot of stuff going on in the background where they are talking about that, and they're talking about like, how do we make that work? There's a lot of different ideas about how we should introduce different things. Should you have it just be a whole bunch of different options in there, and then you have a qualification with different options, and or not? So that's a discussion that's currently still working. I mean, it's always going to kind of lag behind the actual industry, just because that's just how it has to work. Because then you have to decide what to do, and then try to shift it. I know at the moment, we're trying to introduce some stuff that we see would be valuable. And the first thing we did is said, well, let's check with the employers that we're working with. Like, do you think this would be valuable? And what would you include? Because we're looking at trying to maybe introduce some small business training to go, as an option for apprentices as well, as an extra thing. It's something that I think we're lacking a bit in New Zealand with our apprenticeships, because there's nothing in there for that. So a lot of apprentices will finish, and then maybe they're like, oh, I'm gonna go start my own company, and then they don't know what to do, and they just stumble through it and make a lot of mistakes along the way. But maybe a little bit of training for that. If for those that want to do that, then they might say, oh, I want to take that extra thing. But that's what we're trying to look at now, and I think it's important that the training kind of tries to keep up with what's happening around it. In other countries, things are more specialized, where you do have quite distinct divisions between stuff, and they do things a bit differently. But in New Zealand, traditionally, we have been like, if you're a builder, you could do everything from ground prep all the way up to finished house,
Yeah.
And you just bring in people to do the plumbing and the electrical, but you do everything else.
Yeah, and it's almost like I always find it interesting, with like say rural apprenticeships or apprentices versus like in the city. You'd assume like the city apprentices would like be better off because there's like more access to whatever.
Yeah.
But like there's almost an argument, right, that the rural apprentices are probably going to be a better all-round builder by the end of it because
they might have a wider range of experience possibly because you just have had to, because you don't have the luxury of have someone else come in and line the whole building for you really quickly. So
Yeah.
you have to do all the lining. And that's cool because you get to do it. Or even the roof cladding. You don't have someone come and do the roof cladding because there isn't necessarily someone to do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is I think a cool thing about that. It doesn't mean, that everyone should just try and do that. That doesn't really work either. So you
Yeah.
kind of have to work with what you've got.
It's kind of hard, yeah, because I mean, I talk to builders all the time, right, and employers, and they're sort of like, well, I'm teaching my guys like I want them to be all rounded. Like if they quickly need to jump on the digger,
Yeah.
and quickly like move some dirt, they can do that. Like they can do it. It's not they can do a bit of everything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think I can see that there's definitely like benefit for them to be all rounded. But then like in a world 20 years from now, you also have to ask yourself, is that even really will it be valuable at that point for a guy that can jump on a digger? That's like maybe it's more,
I think for that person it would be. I think it'd be valuable to have those skills.
Yes.
Even if you don't use them all the time, good skills to have. As far as it being part of the apprenticeship per se, I don't know. You're right. And that's I think where the question is being asked now. What needs to be part of the apprenticeship? And I usually tell apprentices that too. I say, look, you're going to learn a lot of stuff on site that isn't in the apprenticeship. So I'm here just to kind of see how you're doing with what's in the apprenticeship. Outside of that, you're going to learn a ton. And when you're done, that's not when you finish learning. Like when you're done your apprenticeship, it's not like, yeah, I'm a builder now. I don't have to learn anything ever. No, it continues. Like that's where you've kind of learned how to learn things in a construction context.
Yeah.
Like when I was at university, that's one of the things I learned is that being at university for way too long, it didn't make me super smart, but it did teach me kind of how to learn in a certain way.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was a good thing, but you kind of learn how to learn because then you go into any job, any role, it's going to be different and you're going to have to learn stuff. And I think that's what's the apprenticeship is structured there to give you a really good, well-rounded, basic knowledge and understanding and skill level at a what we call like a minimum standard. But in your apprenticeship, you're going to learn, in your job, you're going to learn a whole bunch more stuff. But the apprenticeship sets you up to like how to learn in a construction context, how to learn in a building context for the rest of your career. Because you're always going to be learning stuff. And if you put some really good things in place, like recording stuff, writing things down, studying all the time, get some of those habits in there, it's going to do you really well for the rest of your career, whatever that ends up being in the construction industry or even maybe outside of that. But especially in the construction industry, because you've learned kind of how to learn in that context.
Yeah.
And that's part of, I think, what people might not realize when they first start their apprenticeship. They think it's like, oh, I'm done now. I don't have to learn anymore. It's like, well, you don't necessarily have to get assessed on it anymore, but you still need to learn a lot of stuff because there's always going to be new methods, new materials. There's always going to be something where you're like, wow, I've never done this before. And you're going to have to learn it.
Yeah.
And sometimes young guys maybe don't, and girls don't realize that. But I think once they do, then it can really help shape their mindset when they're in their apprenticeship.
Yeah.
So looking at it as like, this is actually setting me up for a life of learning.
I think that's so valuable what you just said there, because especially if they then go and start their own businesses, like the learning curve is huge. And once you start falling in love with like learning, obviously learning things that are relevant to you and interesting to you, then it's never gonna have to stop learning, right? And I think it's maybe, do you think there's maybe like a limiting belief a little bit there with a lot of the people coming through, because at school, you weren't good at like learning like biology, and therefore you're not really a guy that,
I think it happens a lot, especially with people who maybe get funneled into trades because it's like, oh, well, you're not so good at this. And it's like, I think that's not the right way to look at it.
Yeah.
It's like, actually, maybe you just learn in a different way.
Yeah.
And that's fine. Maybe there's something else that interests you.
I talked to a builder the other day, and he was saying that he just couldn't do like the writing stuff. Like
Yeah.
he wasn't that good at like the write. So he would like do a lot of the stuff audio. I don't know how he did that, but like a lot of the stuff was just like if someone just explained it, like if he was explaining the answers, he could get it perfect.
Right.
If he had to write the answers or type it out,
Yeah.
he was struggling. So that was the only difference.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a massive story. You know, there's like lies, stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves.
Yeah.
And even our parents tell us things, and it's not necessarily true. And our teachers tell us things that's not necessarily true. And you can actually be great at like at learning and retaining information if you're interested in it.
Yeah.
Versus learning like chemistry or something that you may not be interested at all.
Yeah.
You know,
And like sometimes people who have maybe a learning difference, like someone maybe has ADHD or something, and it does make it hard for them to kind of focus on stuff. But the things that they're interested in, they can like super focus.
Yeah.
And we tend to, I think, maybe now society is changing a little bit, but in education, I think from what I've seen, sometimes it is difficult to like, how do you harness that instead of just going like, oh, you're not doing what I'm telling you to do. But I think if you can harness some of those things, and the things that you're focused on, the things that you enjoy, that's a massive, like actually a good thing. That's a huge benefit to you and to the people working with you, because you could be really, really good at that thing.
Yeah.
Which is cool. And you can, and there's other ways to help with the rest of it.
Yeah.
But like one of my sons has ADHD, and so it's something I've been learning a lot about and how to navigate that. But there's lots of things that he's just really amazing at, and you can see he gets really focused, and and then there's other things that he just really struggles to focus with some things, and you just have to, once you know that, I think once you identify that and don't see it as a negative stigma, like, oh, there's something wrong with you. Instead, it's like, oh, this is just you.
Yeah.
And you go, how can we make that work? There's like lots of opportunities. And I think for apprentices, the same thing. Everyone's going to be different. And a lot of apprentices do struggle with certain things because maybe that's why they left school and didn't go to university or something like that, which I went to university for a long time. And honestly, I don't think I should have. Honestly, if I could go back in time, I might not even go to university. Not to say university's bad, but for me,
wasn't needed.
I could have done a lot of other things. But anyway, it's all right. It was the way it went. But I think for a lot of apprentices, they do come out of maybe an environment where they're told that they're dumb, or they're told they don't, oh, you're not good at that, so you should just go do this. When the reality is, they probably are really good at things. It's just in a different context, maybe. They just haven't figured out. And that's part of my job as well, is trying to help them identify that. Find out what does work for you. Like that one, the builder you were talking about, who maybe doesn't work well with writing stuff down, but verbally is really good. Then it's like, then work with that and go, okay, cool, let's make that work. I mean, I've got a bunch of apprentices who do have things like dyslexia, and they struggle to write things down or to read things. And so they got through school because they maybe had a reader who would sit with them and read stuff to them. I'm like, I don't know if that's a good idea, because then when you're done school, you don't have a reader following you around all day. How are you going to do stuff in real life? And so there is things you can use. There's technology that'll read stuff to you. There's like a C pen, which is a little pen that scans stuff and reads it out. And so we've tried to put some of those things in place to help people, or just talking with them and go, well, what do you find works for you? How have you, because lots of times if, once they've gotten to, their mid 20s or something, they've kind of figured out certain things that do work for them. And okay, well, let's do it that way. And just trying to communicate that that's okay. You don't have to fill in the book. You don't have to write it all down in perfect English. It's like, no, what's going to work for you.
Yeah.
It's more about, are you learning the knowledge? What I want to know is, have you learned this information? I don't really, it's not that I don't care, but I'm not as worried about how you're going to communicate that to me. It's more like, what have you absorbed? What have you learned? And that's, I think, part of our role as a WAE is to be able to do that.
Yeah.
To recognize that everyone's different.
Yeah, I love how you're open-minded about that. So that's really cool. And I've never really liked the ADHD thing, like the title of it, because the name itself says disorder. Yeah. And I think that's not...
It's a very old label. Yeah.
It's an old label. It's not... I don't think it fits.
Nah.
Because it's not a disorder. It's just a different way of operating. And also like different to the norm or whatever. What's normal, So I think, it's just a bit different. But I want to, before I let you go as well, because time has actually flown by, but I want to know just a last piece of advice that you would give employers. What is sort of one thing that employers could do? Maybe we don't want to tell them how to suck eggs, but what's one thing that they could do that would really assist their apprentice if they did this thing?
I know employers have a lot on their plate. Obviously, just the work in general is a lot. But I think one of the things that would really assist is for when we send them the information about the report. So the report saying what we did in the visit and what the apprentices, actually achieved, and a summary of where they're at. If they somehow, either them or the supervisor who works with that apprentice, if they could just take a look at that and be aware of where the apprentice is sitting in their apprenticeship. I've told apprentices to try and make their employer or the supervisor aware of it and always kind of communicate that with them and go, hey, this is where I'm sitting with this. What do I need to do? But if employers, if they had, I understand it because they've got so much going on. But I think if they're able to, that would, I think, make a big difference to the apprentice's progress, because then, hey, right now, this is where, according to the progress, that Jason has recorded, this is where he's sitting. And when you see the apprentice and give them a task, you can actually go, oh, actually, you're doing that, maybe unsupervised. You could actually do that unsupervised, or you could try it out and see, I always try and encourage the apprentices to make sure they're communicating that with the people they're working with. But I think the other end too, the employers, I know and I understand, like, there's a lot going on as a builder. You're running a business, you're actually trying to build something. There's all sorts of voices in your head.
Yeah.
But I think that would be something that would probably be quite beneficial. And some do that, which is great. And that's where I'm kind of coming from, is I do know some employers that do that, and I see a big difference. Because when I talk to them, they know. I'm not going like, hey, I saw, he's done this and they did, he seemed to be doing it a lot better. What do you think? Because I rely on them, obviously, especially for me, not being a builder and not coming from that background. I do rely a lot on the supervisor or the employer, whoever is working with that person, to say, what do you think? You're the one who's observing them. You're the one who's giving them the task to do. Where do you think they're at? And sometimes they're like, oh, I don't know. I didn't really watch. And it's like, oh, crap. But if they are, attuned to that, it makes a big difference, because then they're like, oh, yeah, he's actually done really well, or, oh, he's got to work on this. And then I think that feedback is really helpful.
Yeah, 100%. Jason, thank you so much for coming on.
No problem.
Had a great chat.
Cool.
You've also got 4 children. I've got 4 children.
Yeah, 4 boys.
So we know, we know what it's like to to live the good life.
It's awesome. It is awesome.
It is great, eh? But it's not all awesome, but it is awesome. But thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. And for those listening, maybe you're thinking of changing apprenticeship providers. Builders Academy obviously is a sponsor, so go check them out. Maybe reach out to them, reach out to Jason, and
Cool.
Thanks for coming on.
No, thank you.